everyone, let me paint you a quick picture. Imagine this. Before you even begin your side of an argument, someone says, well, you can't really trust anything she says. She's probably just doing all this for attention. At that point, does anything you say really matter to the audience? Probably not. This is an unfair and harmful tactic known as poisoning the well. All of us experience situations where people are judged before they even speak, whether it is in a classroom, at a workplace, in an online debate, or even in family discussions. This fallacy is just everywhere. Learning to recognize it can help you think more clearly, respond to it effectively, and avoid making the same mistakes yourself. So, I spent some time going through academic, philosophical, and psychological sources to understand this fallacy from the perspectives of several other scholars, and I believe that understanding is key to building respectful and meaningful conversations. Poisoning the well is a harmful fallacy that shifts focus from evidence to direct character attacks, silencing their voices before their ideas are even considered. So I will start by defining and explaining the fallacy using a clear example, then I will show how it harms communication and trust, and finally I will discuss how to recognize and respond to it in real-world situations. Let us now begin by understanding what poisoning the well really means and how it actually works. According to Richard Nordquist's article on ThoughtCo, poisoning the well is a type of ad hominem attack that happens when someone presents negative information about a person to an audience before they can even speak. Their whole goal is to create distrust so that whatever the person says later is dismissed, no matter how valid or true it might be. For instance, saying something like, before you hear from him, remember that he always has twisted facts to fit his agenda, sets the audience against the speaker before the argument even starts. This tactic is toxic as it removes the focus from the strength of the argument and places it unfairly on the speaker's perceived character. What makes this fallacy particularly tricky, though, is that it is often disguised as a warning or a helpful heads-up, which just makes it harder for people to see through. So this article helps us see that the fallacy is not just a poor debate tactic, but is also a deliberate strategy that damages honest discussions. Now that you know how this fallacy looks like, let's explore how it harms not just arguments, but also relationships and entire communities. So for my next source, which is Psychology Today, Dr. Todd Nelson explains that poisoning the well is not just a logical fallacy, but is also a form of cognitive bias that behaves like prejudice. And he notes that we often engage in this fallacy by dismissing someone entirely based on a perceived flaw or stereotype, long before we've even listened to what they have to say. For example, labeling someone as naive, manipulative, or too emotional shuts down their voice without ever addressing their actual argument. Dr. Nelson stresses that this kind of thinking not only disrespects others, but limits our own understanding. And when we rely on assumptions instead of evidence, we stop listening, we stop thinking critically, and we lose opportunities to learn from perspectives that are different from our own, which could even potentially boost our knowledge. He also points out that this bias does not just affect individuals, but damages entire conversations and ultimately even communities. It encourages divisions, reinforces harmful stereotypes, and keeps people in echo chambers where real discussions can't actually happen. He reminds us that being aware of this bias is the first step toward open-mindedness, which is very important for clear communication. If we want to build deep connections, respectful, and meaningful dialogue, we need to understand how easily our minds can fall into the trap of misjudging others. So now that you know how poisoning the well undermines both personal growth as well as social connection, let us move on to recognizing this fallacy and responding to it in a fair and thoughtful way. An academic paper from the University of Birmingham titled Poisoning the Well and Epistemic Privilege explores the deeper implications of this fallacy, particularly how it undermines epistemic justice. The authors argue that poisoning the well is not just a logical flaw, but also has ethical consequences. So when someone discredits another person before they speak, they often strip that person off of what is called epistemic privilege, or the basic right to be heard as a speaker. This fallacy is especially harmful when used against individuals from marginalized groups. For example, saying, "You're only saying that because you're emotional," is not only just dismissive, but also invalidates that person's lived experience. The paper explains that recognizing this fallacy involves more than just spotting a personal attack. It requires paying attention to who's being silenced, why it is happening, and whether the speaker's background is being unfairly used against them. So responding means choosing to engage with the actual argument and refusing to accept personal discrediting as a substitute for critical thinking. Now, let us wrap up by reviewing the key takeaways from this. We looked at the fallacy known as poisoning the well. We started by defining it as a tactic that discredits someone before they can even speak. Then we moved on to exploring how it damages trust and shuts down deep connections. Finally, we talked about how to spot it and respond to it in a fair and respectful way. Poisoning the well is not just a debate mistake, but is also a form of manipulation that silences people and weakens communication. So the next time you hear someone start an argument by discrediting a person's character or motives, pause for a moment. Ask yourself whether the issue is being judged fairly. Each of us can choose to create a space where ideas are judged on their own merits and not based on who is speaking. So when we do that, we not only keep the well clean, but also make the conversation better for everyone.